They thought I was too old to hear through walls. They were wrong. It was 7:42 a.m. when I heard the soft knock on my kitchen door. I was flipping bacon, still in my robe, humming some song I can't remember now. When I opened the door, there was my daughter Rachel. Too much perfume, clipboard in hand. All smiles like this was some kind of surprise visit. "Hey, Dad," she said sweetly, stepping in before I could say a word. Behind her, Dave followed, holding coffee cups and pretending like this was normal. It wasn't. They never visited in the morning, never without calling, never with paperwork. She sat me down at the table like a child. "We've been thinking," she began. That phrase, "we've been thinking," has never once led to anything good in my life. "We just want what's best for you. A place where you'll be safe, people your age, medical staff." I blinked at her. Then I looked at Dave, who couldn't even meet my eyes. "You mean a nursing home?" I said. Rachel winced like the word was vulgar. "It's not what you think." But it was exactly what I thought. They'd picked one already, had a tour scheduled. She used words like transition and dignity, while I stared at the crumbs on the table I built with my own 2 hands. 30 years in this house, and they were erasing me like I was an old stain. She pushed papers toward me. "We can go over these together." I said nothing, just nodded and pretended I was tired. I told them I needed to lie down. They let themselves out, said they'd come back tomorrow to continue the conversation. But they didn't know I stayed behind the hallway door after I got up, and I heard Dave's voice, low and tight. "We need those keys by next week. The realtor's already lined up the buyer." Realtor. That word cracked through me like ice breaking in spring. I waited till I heard their car pull away. Then I sat in my chair, stared at the table, and let the silence wrap around me. They thought I was old. They thought I was alone. They thought they had me boxed in. But by the next morning, the locks were changed. Not on me, on them. I wasn't going anywhere. And now, it's my move. By 9 a.m. the next morning, Leroy was already at the door with his old red toolbox and that slow, deliberate walk of a man who's seen too much and still has stories to tell. "You sure you want to do this, Walt?" he asked, squinting under his cap. "Ain't no turning back once you lock 'em out." I nodded once. "They already turned their backs on me. I'm just returning the favor." Leroy gave a quiet whistle and got to work. Clicks. Clanks, the satisfying pop of the old deadbolt giving way, like it had been waiting years to be replaced. We didn't talk much, just sat on the porch while he worked. The September sun was soft, filtering through the trees like it still respected men like us. "You know," Leroy said, wiping sweat from his forehead, "they did the same to my cousin's daddy. Signed him over like he was a junked car. Man ended up dying of pneumonia in a place that didn't even call him by his real name." I swallowed hard. "Rachel says it's about safety, about giving me the care I deserve." Leroy chuckled dryly. "Yeah, and snakes blink too." He finished the last lock just before lunch. I paid him in cash and a cold root beer. He refused the tip. "You keep your pride, Walt. A lot of folks want to steal that from us nowadays." That afternoon I waited. I made a sandwich, washed the dish, sat by the window like I was watching a storm roll in. At 5:36 p.m., their silver SUV pulled up. Rachel got out first, face already puckered with purpose. Dave followed, phone in hand, smirking like he was about to close a deal. They walked up the front steps and tried the knob. Didn't turn. I watched from the hallway, didn't say a word. Dave knocked, light at first, then louder. Rachel pressed the doorbell twice. Nothing. She pulled out her phone. I knew she was calling me. I let it ring, let the silence settle in their throats. I finally opened the side window a crack. "Walter Dean Harmon," Rachel called out, voice shaking. "Open this door right now." I just looked at her. "This is still my house," I said evenly. "You don't have the right—" "No," I interrupted, my voice calm as stone. "You don't." And then I closed the window. The sound of that glass sliding down felt like reclaiming air after drowning. They stood there for a few more minutes, stunned, before walking back to the car. For the first time in years, my home felt like mine again. But this wasn't over. This was only the first warning shot. By noon, my dining table looked like the aftermath of a flood. Papers everywhere, some yellowed with age, others stiff from the filing cabinet I hadn't opened in years. The deed, dated June 8, 1983. Insurance policies, still valid, bank statements, pension slips, even Linda's obituary from the Dayton Daily News tucked between two folders. It was all here. Proof that this house, these walls, this floor, this porch where Rachel used to sit and draw with chalk, was not theirs to give away. I sat in my old recliner and held a photo of Linda in her Sunday dress, her smile still soft, still sacred. She died in this house, and if I'm being honest, I haven't really lived since. But now, something inside me was waking up. A kind of fire that doesn't burn, but sears memory into skin. At 3:41 p.m., I heard the rattle of the back door. They'd found the spare key, the one I kept hidden behind the fake brick near the gutter. Damn it! I moved fast, heart pounding like it used to when I worked at the mill, back when the belt snapped and everyone ran for cover. I reached the door just as the knob twisted. "Dad?" Rachel's voice. I opened the door before she could step in. She looked stunned to see me standing there. "I changed the locks," I said, "all of them." "That key don't work anymore. Dad, we're just trying to talk." "You had your talk, now I'm talking." Behind her, Dave rolled his eyes. "This is getting ridiculous, Walt. We're trying to help you. You're not thinking straight." I looked him dead in the eye. "Don't call me Walt. You don't know me like that." Rachel stepped forward, but I held up my hand. "One more step and I call the cops. You're trespassing." "You wouldn't dare," Dave muttered. I didn't answer, just slowly shut the door in their faces. This time, I locked it twice. They banged for a while, then left. But not before I saw Dave toss the fake brick across the yard in frustration. Let him throw things. Let him shout. I was done being the one who gave in. They wanted me gone. Now I was the one doing the erasing. And this house? It's going to remind them who built it. I found the envelope just after my morning coffee. Slid under the door like I was some tenant in a motel who overstayed his welcome. No stamp, no return address, just my name, typed in stiff Times New Roman. Walter D. Harmon. Inside, 2 sheets of paper, crisp and cruel. Notice of intent to petition for adult guardianship. I read every word slowly. They used phrases like diminished capacity, risk of self-neglect, inability to manage finances, all dressed up in politeness, but every line screamed the same thing. "We've already decided you're done." The letter wasn't even signed by Rachel. It was from her lawyer, someone named Leonard F. Dupree. But it had Dave's fingerprints all over it. He's the one who likes paperwork. Rachel just signs what's put in front of her. I stared at the letter for a long time. Then I folded it gently, like a flag after a funeral, and placed it on the kitchen table beside my crossword book. I wasn't going to panic. I was going to prepare. At 10:17 a.m., my phone rang. Rachel's number. I didn't answer, but the voicemail came through. I pressed play, and that's when I heard it. Not Rachel. A man's voice. The voicemail had been left accidentally. A conversation recorded mid-call. "She won't fight it," the man said. "If your father shows up in court looking confused, tired, we've got a shot. Just make sure the bank accounts are frozen before then." A pause. Then, "Tell Dave to keep him isolated. No neighbors, no outside contact. The more he looks alone, the better." My jaw tightened. My hands didn't shake. Not anymore. They were building a case, trying to frame me as incapable, vulnerable, alone. I stood up, went to the living room, pulled the yellow pages from the shelf. Yes, I still have one. And I flipped until I found the name I was looking for. Joseph R. Martin, attorney at law, elder rights and probate. Joe and I coached Little League together back in '92. His daughter used to braid Rachel's hair in the dugout. He owed me a favor, and even if he didn't, I knew he was one of the good ones. I dialed the number. "Martin Law," the receptionist answered. "Tell Joe it's Walt Harmon. I need to talk, today." They wanted to paint me as a ghost, an old man in decline. But ghosts can haunt, and I was about to become the worst nightmare Dave ever had. Joe's office hadn't changed in 30 years. Same heavy oak desk, same creaky leather chairs, same little brass fan that didn't really work but made you feel cooler just by humming. He met me at the door with a handshake and a look that said, "Whatever it is, I'm already on your side." "Walt Harmon," he said, like he was greeting a ball player returning to the game. "Still got that curveball?" "Not much use for curveballs these days," I muttered. We sat. I slid the envelope across the table. Joe opened it with a small letter opener shaped like a baseball bat, probably a gift from some grateful parent back in the Little League days. He read in silence. Then played the voicemail I'd saved to my old flip phone. When it ended, Joe leaned back in his chair and let out a slow breath. "Well," he said, "they're not even being subtle, are they?" "Guess they figured I'd just fold." Joe shook his head. "Walt, this isn't just a guardianship grab. They're building a financial case to make you look unstable. Once you're declared incompetent, they can liquidate assets, shut down your accounts, even sell your home if it's not protected. You're lucky you caught it early." I sat still, staring at the little scratch on the desk where Joe's daughter once carved her initials by accident. "What do I do?" I asked quietly. Joe's voice went steel cold. "We fight." He outlined a plan, tight, efficient, no wasted moves. Step 1, medical documentation. I'd get a full cognitive exam signed by a state-certified physician. Step 2, legal filings to contest the guardianship and freeze any unauthorized access to my accounts. Step 3, a formal restraining notice to keep Rachel and Dave from making moves behind my back. "We'll need evidence," he said, flipping open a legal pad. "Dates, documents, anything showing you've been managing your life. Bills, taxes, prescriptions, phone logs, whatever you've got." "I've got a file box in the attic," I said. "Good," Joe replied. "Start digging. And Walt..." He paused. "They forgot one thing. You're still breathing, and that means you're still dangerous." That night I pulled the old metal file box from the attic, wiped the dust off the lid, and started digging. They wanted to erase me with silence. I was about to speak louder than I ever had. There's something holy about old paper, the way it smells, the way it crinkles, the way it holds your life better than any memory ever could. I spent the entire day surrounded by it. Stacks of bank statements, utility bills, handwritten lists of medications, my military discharge papers, even a receipt from the dentist 3 months ago where I paid in cash and signed my name in pen so shaky I almost didn't recognize it. But it was mine. Every item said the same thing. This man is not lost. This man is present. I filed it all neatly into 3 labeled folders: financial, medical, personal. Then I opened my journal, a new one I bought the day after the locks changed. Page 1. Tuesday, September 23rd. They tried the back door again today. I didn't answer. Every entry was dated, signed, sometimes time-stamped. If they wanted to prove I was slipping, they'd have to deal with the receipts, literal and otherwise. In the evening, I recorded a video on my old laptop. Just me, sitting at the kitchen table, talking. "My name is Walter Dean Harmon. I'm of sound mind, and this is what's happening to me." I didn't rehearse, just spoke. And when I was done, I saved the file to a USB stick and hid it in the freezer inside an old tub of Neapolitan ice cream no one ever eats. Around 8 p.m., I made a sandwich, bologna, mustard, white bread. Same dinner I used to make for Rachel when her mom worked late. I sat in the quiet, thinking about those days. When she used to ask me questions about the stars. When she'd fall asleep with her head on my shoulder during movies. When she still saw me as someone solid. Then came the knock. 3 short raps, not frantic, official. I stood, heart steady but cautious. Looked through the peephole. Police, 2 uniforms, 1 young, 1 older. Cruiser parked by the curb, lights off. I opened the door just a crack. "Evening, officers." The older one stepped forward. "Mr. Harmon, we received a wellness concern call from your daughter. Says you haven't been answering." "I've been documenting everything," I said calmly. "I'm not in danger. I'm not confused. I'm not alone. Would you like to come in and see for yourselves?" They hesitated, looked at each other. The younger one nodded. "That'd be fine, sir." I let them in. Showed them the folders, the video, even the journal. They left 20 minutes later. No incident, no report. But as they stepped off my porch, the older one turned back and said, "You got someone trying to pull a fast one, Mr. Harmon?" I looked him in the eye. "Not anymore." And I closed the door, slow, quiet, like a man preparing for war and winning. The voicemail came just after sunrise, a voice dipped in honey and desperation. "Hi, Dad. Just checking in. We're worried. No one's heard from you, and we don't want this to get complicated. Call me back, okay? We love you." She almost sold it. Almost, but I could hear it. The coached pauses, the deliberate phrasing. "We love you." Not "I love you." Not "I'm sorry." Just the kind of love you say through gritted teeth when your lawyer tells you to build a paper trail. I didn't call back. Instead, I put on my good flannel shirt, the one Linda gave me for our 30th anniversary, and went to see Dr. Elaine Mercer. Her office still smelled like eucalyptus and coffee, same as it did when Linda was sick. "Walter," she said warmly, "I heard about the situation. You holding up?" "I'm holding," I replied. We ran every test: memory recall, reasoning, reflexes, coordination. She even threw in a blood panel and checked my blood pressure twice. An hour later, she signed a statement of full mental competence. "You're as sharp as ever," she said, scribbling her signature. "Sharper than some of my nurses, honestly." "Thanks, Doc. Fight 'em." She added quietly as I reached the door, "Don't let them take your name." That night, Joe filed the first motion, a formal counter to Rachel and Dave's guardianship claim. We froze access to my accounts, served notice to Dupree, their lawyer, cited the voicemail, the police visit, the false claims. But the real punch came in the mail, certified envelope, thick, legal weight, inside a formal petition declaring I was no longer capable of maintaining a safe, independent lifestyle. They used phrases like observable disorganization, signs of paranoia, potential threat to self-care. I stood on my porch as the wind picked up, holding the paper in both hands like it might disintegrate if I blinked. And then I did something I hadn't done in months. I sat down at my old kitchen table, turned on the lamp, opened my journal, and wrote one sentence. "They're trying to erase me." Then I flipped the page and wrote the title. This is how it really happened. If they wanted to build a story, I'd give them one they couldn't bury, truth from the source. And this time, it wouldn't be whispered in a courtroom. It'd be told loud enough for the world to hear. The first time I held a pen to paper, I didn't know where to start. But my hand did. Her name was Linda. She smelled like soap and always laughed before the joke finished. That was the first sentence. By the end of the night, I had 6 pages filled. My childhood in Cincinnati, meeting Linda at the old Civic Center dance, our tiny apartment with peeling paint and too much love for the square footage. Then Rachel, born too early, too small, but strong. I wrote about my first job at the rail yard, about Linda crying when I got laid off, and about the little house we found in Dayton with the cracked porch and the big backyard. The house I still live in, the one they're trying to take. Each line I wrote made me feel more alive, like carving my name into something that couldn't be rewritten. Joe called the next morning. Judge reviewed the case. We've got a temporary block on the guardianship, at least until the hearing next month. I exhaled for the first time in days, but peace doesn't last in war. That afternoon the power flickered, the fridge shut off, so did the heater. I called the electric company thinking it was a neighborhood outage. "Mr. Harmon," the woman on the line said, "someone filed a request to disconnect your service. It was signed under your name using a power of attorney dated 2019. My blood ran cold. That POA. The one Rachel asked me to sign when she said she'd help with online stuff. I forgot to revoke it. "Can you reverse it?" I asked. "We can flag it as fraud, but it'll take a day or two." I sat in the dark for the next 3 hours wrapped in an old quilt, the sound of the refrigerator quiet as a grave. They weren't just attacking my rights. They were chipping away at my life. Dave. I could feel his fingerprints on it. Slick, smug, strategic. He knew how systems worked, how to pull strings behind the scenes and make it look like accident or concern. That night, I lit candles and kept writing. "This isn't about comfort anymore," I wrote. "This is about erasure. They want me to vanish quietly. But I didn't spend 68 years surviving this world just to disappear. You want me gone? Then get ready for a fight you'll never forget." We drove straight to Joe's office the next morning, revoked everything, every document with Rachel's name, every old permission slip from when I thought help still meant help. The new paperwork was clean, sharp, legal armor. Joe even helped me draft a will, lean, airtight. I, Walter Dean Harmon, being of sound mind and memory. That phrase hit different now. When we finished, I looked at Joe across the desk. "If anything happens to me," he held up a hand, "nothing will. But if it does, they get nothing." Back home, Leroy came by with a few tools and an old duffel bag. He installed 2 cameras, one on the porch, one facing the back gate, and a basic alarm system with a keypad. "It's not Fort Knox," he said, "but it'll make 'em think twice." That night, I lit one of Linda's old scented candles, lavender and something I couldn't name, and wrote for 2 hours straight. Then I slept. But peace don't last long these days. By Friday morning, a man in a beige suit rang the bells. He handed me a thick envelope and a grim little smile. "You've been served, Mr. Harmon. Order for mental health evaluation under protective review. State compliance required." I stared at the document. It was from their lawyer, Dupree. They weren't trying to win in court. They were trying to wear me down, brick by brick. The paperwork cited a state clause. In cases where mental health deterioration is suspected, temporary evaluation may be sought under elder care protective provisions. In plain English, they wanted to force me into a psych eval, mandatory, supervised, state-observed. I slammed the door and locked it behind me, sat on the couch, stared at the paper for a long time. Am I losing it? I thought. Is this what it feels like? I felt small. For the first time since this began, I actually felt afraid. But then, I remembered something. In the hallway closet, buried behind photo albums, I found the old camcorder, charged it up, pressed play. The screen lit up with static, then focus. Linda in the backyard, laughing. Rachel, maybe 5 years old, running in a pink dress, screaming, "Daddy, look at me!" I watched the footage until the battery died, and when the screen went black, I whispered, I remember all of it." That was enough. Enough to fight, enough to win. They could test me, but they'd never break me. I didn't sleep the night before the evaluation, not because I was afraid of the test, because I was afraid of what it meant that it had come to this. A man who built a life with his bare hands now had to prove, to strangers, that he could think straight. Joe handled the paperwork. He got them to agree the evaluation would happen at my home. No institutional visit, no ambulance, no traps. Dr. Elaine Mercer, state-licensed, longtime practitioner, would administer the test under court-approved observation. She arrived at 10:03 a.m., gray wool coat. Clipboard, no nonsense. "You ready, Walter?" "Born ready," I said, even though I didn't feel it. We sat at the kitchen table, same one I built in '91 after the original cracked from water damage. Rachel was 12 then. She helped me sand the corners. Dr. Mercer went through the motions. Memory recall, logic problems, pattern recognition. Name the last 3 presidents. What's today's date? Who's the current governor? I answered them all. Calm, clear, focused. Outside, through the lace curtain, I saw Rachel's SUV parked across the street. She wasn't alone. Dave sat in the passenger seat, sunglasses on, arms crossed, like a man waiting for a verdict. They didn't come to check on me. They came to watch me fall. I made sure the porch camera caught them both. When Dr. Mercer finished, she clicked her pen shut. "Well?" She smiled. "You're fine, Walter. Better than half my 50-year-olds. She signed the form, sealed it in the envelope, and placed it in my hands. Official, final, undeniable. "You want me to walk it to the courthouse?" she asked. "No," I said. Let me sit with it a while." After she left, I sat at the table and stared at the envelope. I'd won this round, legally, medically. But the victory felt hollow, because deep down I knew something that the paper didn't say. This wasn't about mental health. It was about control, about power, about greed wrapped in concern, and betrayal dressed in love. They hadn't called, hadn't apologized, hadn't stopped. They were waiting for the next move, and I was ready, because the next time they came, I wouldn't just have paperwork, I'd have the truth, and the truth always shows up. Eventually. We filed the declaration on Monday. Joe called it a preemptive evidentiary statement, but I just called it telling the damn truth. 7 typed pages, sworn under penalty of perjury. Exhibit A, voicemail recording. Exhibit B, copy of the forged utility shutoff order. Exhibit C, Dr. Mercer's full mental health evaluation. Exhibit D, photographed timestamps of Dave and Rachel parked outside my house, observing during a wellness check. I signed every page with a pen Joe gave me. A thick one, blue ink, the kind you don't use unless you mean it. Then I made a copy and walked a second set to the VFW post over on Harmon Avenue. I hadn't been there in years, not since Linda passed. The place still smelled like old beer and dusty flags. They remembered me, some by name, others just by nod. I sat down at a back table with 3 other guys, Earl, Kenny, and a man they just called Doc. We talked, for hours, about sons and daughters who turned cold, about nursing homes signed behind backs, about accidents that weren't. "You think it's just you?" Doc said, "until you hear the same damn story told 5 different ways." It made me furious, but it also made me feel something else, not alone. The next morning, I sent a copy of the declaration to Dupree, Rachel, and Dave's lawyer. No threat, no insult, just the truth. Let them read it in silence. Let them feel the weight. That night, I found an envelope in my mailbox. No stamp, no handwriting, just my name, typed. Inside one sheet of paper, a photo, black and white, of me, sitting on my porch, taken from the street, that morning. I stared at it for a long time, not scared, just angry, because it wasn't just surveillance. It was a message. They were watching, trying to rattle me. But they forgot one thing. I grew up in a time when men fixed roofs, buried their own dead, and stood still even when the world tilted. You want to watch? Then watch this. I'm not going anywhere. The next morning, I added 2 new cameras, one facing the street, one hidden in the bushes near the mailbox. Leroy helped, grumbling about coward moves, and kids who don't know what it means to earn a damn thing. I filed a report with the precinct. Officer Bell, the younger one who'd come during the wellness call, made sure it was logged. "You want us to press this?" he asked, holding the photo. "Not yet," I said, "but if a second one shows up, I want it on the record." That night, I didn't write in my journal. I wrote letters. First one was to Rachel. It wasn't polite, but it wasn't cruel either, just honest. I told her about the morning she was born, about the first time she walked, how scared I was when she got her driver's license, and how proud I was when she left for college. Then I told her what this betrayal had done, what it felt like. "You didn't just try to take my house," I wrote. "You tried to take my name, my mind, myself." I didn't know if I'd ever send it. The next letter was to Emily, my granddaughter. She's only 12, too young to understand now, but one day she might. I hope when you read this you know I didn't disappear. I stayed, even when they tried to write me off the page. And the last letter was to Linda. Just her name at the top, and a flood of everything beneath it. I cried halfway through, hadn't cried in years. "I don't know how we got here," I wrote, "but I know you wouldn't have let them do this to me." When I finished, I folded the letters, sealed each in an envelope, and placed them in the old wooden box in the closet, the one with our wedding rings inside. Later, Joe called. Court date confirmed, 2 weeks. "The judge is fair," he said, "but they'll come hard." I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. After I hung up, I stood in the living room, listening to the silence. It used to be peaceful. Now it buzzed. I looked at myself in the hallway mirror, not just tired, worn, and for the first time since this all began, I wondered, am I becoming something I won't recognize? That night, I dreamed of Linda. She was sitting on the porch knitting, humming that old hymn she used to love. She looked up and said one thing, "Don't forget who you are, Walter." I won't. Not now. Not ever. I sat at the kitchen table with Joe's notes spread in front of me like puzzle pieces from a life too large to frame. "You only get 5 minutes, Walt," he had said. "Use them wisely. 5 minutes to defend 68 years. 5 minutes to explain why I still deserve to live on my own terms." I tried opening with dates, facts, clean lines of defense, but it felt empty, so I started over. "Your Honor," I wrote, "I am not confused. I am not unsafe. I am not alone." I looked out the window. September leaves, half turned. My backyard still mine. I am a husband who buried his wife, a father who raised a daughter, a man who paid his taxes, kept his roof from leaking, and remembered birthdays without Facebook reminders. That felt better. Then came the knock, not a banging, just hesitant. When I opened the door, I was stunned. Rachel, alone. No clipboard, no car idling, no sunglasses hiding motives. She stood like a girl again, like someone uncertain. "Dad," she said, her voice catching, "can we talk?" I stepped aside. We sat across from each other in silence for a while. "I didn't know," she finally said. "I didn't know it would get this bad. Dave said, he said we were protecting you." "By trying to take everything?" She looked down. "I didn't sign the disconnect form. That was him." "Do you believe I'm incapable?" She didn't answer, but she didn't nod either. "I don't know what I believe," she whispered. "But this, all of this, it wasn't supposed to be war." I didn't shout, didn't cry. I just said, it didn't have to be. She stood up to leave. At the door she paused. "I'm not coming to court. I told Dave. It's his case now." I nodded. I figured. She walked to her car, got in, and sat for a long time before starting it. After she drove off, I sat back down with my speech, crossed out one line. "This is for the judge," I reminded myself. Not just to win, to show the truth. Because truth, when it stands tall, doesn't need to scream. And I'm done screaming. I've got 5 minutes, and I know exactly what to say. The suit still fit. A little tighter around the shoulders maybe, but it buttoned. That was enough. It smelled faintly of cedar. From the old garment bag I'd kept zipped since Linda's funeral. I tied my own tie, slowly. Hands steady. Joe picked me up at 8:30 a.m. sharp. We didn't say much on the ride. Outside the Montgomery County Courthouse, the sky was a dull gray, like it knew something heavy was about to happen. In the waiting area, Dave sat across from us, scrolling his phone like he didn't have a care in the world. His lawyer, Dupree, was muttering strategy into his ear. Rachel wasn't there. Didn't surprise me. Joe leaned in. Let them talk first, then speak like you're telling a story. That's what wins. At 9:12 we were called in. Judge Warren was a tall woman with tired eyes and a pen that never stopped moving. Dupree opened. He used words like decline, evidence of erratic behavior, documented concern. He brought up the wellness check. The revoked POA, the paranoia of installing cameras. He never once said the word love. Then Joe stood and simply said, Your Honor, we ask that Mr. Harmon speak for himself. The courtroom got very quiet. I stood, walked to the front, no paper in hand, just memory. Your Honor, I began, my name is Walter Dean Harmon. I've lived in the same house for 38 years. I buried my wife there. I raised my daughter there. I pay my bills, cook my meals, take my medicine, and write in a journal every night so I don't forget who I am. I paused. I may walk slower than I used to. I may take a pill for blood pressure. But I am not broken, and I am not confused. I looked at Dave. I am, however, disappointed, deeply. I turned back to the judge. They say this is about concern, but concern doesn't come with subpoenas. Concern doesn't cut the power or force evaluations. Concern doesn't try to erase a man just because he got old. Judge Warren nodded slowly. Mr. Harmon, she said, would you be willing to speak to me privately? Joe blinked, surprised. Of course, I said. She stood. Counselors, wait here. Mr. Harmon, follow me. As I walked toward the judge's chambers, the whole courtroom seemed to blur behind me, not from nerves, from clarity. This wasn't just about rights. It was about being seen. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like someone might actually be looking. Her office was quiet. No gavel, no stenographer, just a wooden desk, a shelf of thick books, and 2 mugs of coffee, one half full, one untouched. Judge Warren motioned for me to sit. She didn't speak at first, just studied me for a moment. Then she took off her glasses, rubbed her eyes, and asked, Mr. Harmon, what do you want from all this? It caught me off guard, not what I expected from a judge. I want to go home, I said, not just physically. I want my life back. The right to close my own door without someone waiting to bust through it. She nodded. And your daughter? What do you want with her? I thought hard. I want her to remember who raised her. I want her to stop listening to the man sitting next to her and start listening to the one who held her when she was sick. But if she can't do that, I'll still stand, alone if I have to. The judge looked down at her notes, then up again. You know, she said softly, my father went through something not so different. After my mother died, we thought he was unraveling. We made a mess. Took control too fast. He didn't talk to me for years. I sat in that silence with her. People confuse age with weakness, I said. But they forget how hard it was to survive this long. She smiled, not wide, just honest. Thank you for speaking plainly, she said. That's more rare than you think. She stood, signaling the meeting was over. I'll issue the ruling within the hour. Please wait in the courtroom. I rose. Before I left, she added, Mr. Harmon, whatever happens today, you're not invisible. Those words hit harder than I expected. I walked back into the courtroom, eyes a little damp, heart a little lighter. Dave didn't look up as I passed. Joe gave me a subtle nod, and I sat back down, hands folded, breath steady. For the first time since all this began, I didn't feel like a defendant. I felt like a man, seen, heard, and soon, maybe just maybe, free. The room was so quiet you could hear the second hand on the courtroom clock. Judge Warren re-entered, papers in hand, robe flowing like wind through memory. We all stood, sat, waited. She began without preamble. This court has reviewed all submitted materials, including the declaration, exhibits, psychological evaluations, and personal testimony. Her voice was even, unshakable. In consideration of Mr. Harmon's cognitive assessment, lived independence, and credible rebuttal of claims, the petition for guardianship is hereby dismissed. A pause, with prejudice. Joe exhaled beside me, quiet, controlled, but I could feel the tension release. Dave didn't move. His lawyer looked like he'd swallowed a tack. Judge Warren continued, "Furthermore, the prior power of attorney filed in 2019 is formally revoked and stricken from legal authority. Any future petitions will require court approval and independent examination." I didn't smile, not because I wasn't relieved, but because this wasn't a victory lap. This was survival. The judge looked at me once more. This court recognizes Mr. Harmon's full legal and mental capacity. He may return to his home without restriction. Gavel. One sharp crack. Done. Dave stood and left without a glance. His lawyer trailed behind, papers crumpled in hand. Joe shook my hand. "Firm. You did it," he said. "I know," I replied. Outside the courthouse, I didn't want to talk. I just wanted air. I found a bench under a tree turning yellow at the edges. Sat down. The wind was soft. No voices, no drama. Just sunlight and the smell of earth. No Rachel. She hadn't called. Hadn't shown. Part of me had hoped. No. I let that thought pass like the breeze. This wasn't about reconciliation. It was about dignity. A leaf landed beside me. I picked it up, turned it over in my hand. One side green, the other brown. In between, that golden color you only see right before a leaf lets go. I closed my eyes, let the breath out slow. No alarms, no knocking, no locks turned against me, just me. Free. And that was enough. They say it takes 21 days to make a habit. Took me 3 to stop looking over my shoulder at the checkout line. The 4th day, I walked to the edge of my backyard and pulled weeds from Linda's old iris bed. Some of them had bloomed late, pale purple, delicate as breath. I talked to her while I worked. "I kept it," I said. "The house, the name, you." She didn't answer, of course, but somehow the wind picked up right when I said it. A small breeze. A yes, maybe. Sunday, I went back to church, slipped in late, sat in the back, didn't take communion, just listened. Some folks looked my way, some didn't. A few nodded. One old friend, Martha Willis, came over after service, patted my shoulder and said, "We were pulling for you." I nodded, didn't have much to say. That night, Joe called. "All filed," he said. "No more court, no more hearings." I thanked him, asked if he'd seen Rachel or Dave. "Not a peep, yeah," he said. "They've gone quiet." The silence was almost louder than the war. I kept writing, finished the last page of my story, printed it, held the pages in my hand like they were something sacred. I didn't write about what they did, not exactly. I wrote about the years before, about Linda's laugh, Rachel's first steps, my father's hands teaching me how to change a tire in the dead of winter. I wrote about staying, because that's what I did. I stayed. When they tried to erase me, I stayed. When the world said, "Step aside," I didn't. And now I sit on my own porch, in my own chair, drinking coffee from the same mug Linda gave me 20 Christmases ago. No one's taken that yet. Let them try. Let them learn. You don't bury men like me with paper. You don't break us with process. You endure us. And sometimes, if we're lucky, we endure you right back. The days got slower, but they didn't get worse. I started waking up without dread. That was new. I made breakfast with the radio on again. Old jazz stations, same ones Linda used to hum along to. The plants on the windowsill finally stopped dying. Funny how that works. Neighbors who never waved before now stopped by with banana bread and weak excuses. Just figured you might want some extra, they'd say. I'd nod, let them talk, thank them on the way out. Leroy still came by every Friday. You keep the grass short, he said. They'll think twice before sneaking up on you again. I laughed. The kind of laugh that feels like a bruise healing. One afternoon the mail came with something new, no return address, but the handwriting, it was a child's. Inside, a folded sheet of notebook paper scribbled with colored pencils. A heart, a flower, a house, and one line. Grandpa, I hope you're not sad anymore. Emily. I read it 5 times, then I sat down and wrote her back. Dear Emily, I'm doing okay. Thank you for the card. It means more than you know. I love you. Always have. Always will. I folded it, mailed it, didn't tell anyone. Some things are just between a grandfather and a girl brave enough to remember him. That evening, I sat at the kitchen table, same one that saw the battles, the tears, the decisions. The sun hit the wall just right, warm, golden, familiar. I took a sip of coffee. Listened to the wind outside. No one knocking, no locks changed, just me. Still here, still me. And finally, that was enough.